Yeah, guys. So this episode came together through networking. Noah Friedman, shout out to him. He hosts a weekly mastermind. It's, I believe, so the high ticket sales mastermind is the name of the little thing he runs every Thursday. It's 6 p.m. Eastern time. If you guys are interested, Ken actually hopped in there one day and was having an extremely insightful conversation just about his business, his mindset of revolving around his business and his identity. And I was just picking up tons of like bits from it. And I was like, I gotta follow this guy. This guy's he's got a head on him. I gotta follow him. So I went ahead and followed Ken. We connected. We both, I think, provided some type of value to each other early on without like asking much in return. Ken posted on his Instagram story the other day that he wants to hop on podcast. We're getting the ball rolling on this. It's just the universe is aligned and, our paths crossed the perfect time.
That kind of leads to how I found out about you, Ken, when I didn't even realize it was you. So the Vice interview with Taji, that whole
Oh,
episode,
yeah.
I remember watching it, and at first was this a troll? Because Taji has this weird way where you can't tell if he's serious or he's joking. So how was
Yeah,
that experience,
100%.
and how did that all come together?
For sure. So I was actually in El Salvador when I got an email from a vice producer and I forget, yeah, the gentleman's name that emailed me. He was saying how he was going to be in California and making a bunch of different documentaries. And one thing he was looking for was like a men's self-improvement, like boot camp. And so when I hopped on a call with him, like I really hyped it up. I was like, yeah, we're the most intense men's boot camp. Like, there's no way you guys even surviving this, kind of baiting him a little bit. It's like, yeah, I was going to put on a good experience for him, but also I was like, oh, if I don't know if they're talking to a couple other people, like, I'm going to sell this. This is why even just this conversation, right? Sales applies to everything, applies to the woman that you're talking to, trying to get her onto a date, or if she's in a relationship with you, you got to keep selling her on why you are that option that she needs to choose, right? And continuously choose. Same with a email talking about a documentary or trying to sell a product or service to a prospect, right? At the end of the day, we need to learn how to communicate and influence. And so I use that skill set on that conversation. And yeah, I think it's November of 20. Gosh, it's like time flies. I think it came out in 22, if I'm right. And so I think it was like 21 that is filmed. And so it came out like, 6 months later. And it was amazing. I've been doing, I got into like the men's self improvement space. And I wouldn't even call it just full self improvement, just like, men's like, yeah, betterment in all capacities, but strictly for the guy that's like, in his 20s or 30s. We've even had guys up into their 50s. But the core is like our core message right now is just helping guys get jacked, paid, and late. How do we do that? Well, the jacked part, I've been in fitness for the past 10 years. I am a certified personal trainer. I never really went that route of doing personal training, but rather I just wanted that knowledge under my belt after I'd already kind of built a solid foundation for myself of understanding, hey, like fitness is such an integral part of how we all feel. Would you guys all agree that like when you get your body, I see you
Yep.
post on your stories all the time, the
Yes, sir.
bicep flexes. Yeah, I love that. And it's so important because it's so funny because I'm sure for a person that doesn't lift or, go to the gym, and that's also another thing is like the word lift, right? That in my mind is like lifting weight. But for me, I have time periods where I'm actually going to a physical gym, and I'll have other time periods where I'm doing one hand push ups and, jump squats and doing pull ups with my pull up rings I throw over trees. So at the end of the day, it's like working out your body to, yes, be jacked physically, but also just get your mind and body and to say a mind and soul right. Because when that's right, then it carries into the other aspects. The getting, paid part, that's all about understanding. Look, if you're a guy that is clear on whatever business model you have, and the amazing thing is we could pivot and we can change things. I'm sure all of us have tried probably like 4 different business models over the past 5 years to kind of see what works best. I think sales at the end of the day, like, being an entrepreneur where you can go into an organization, learn these skill sets, but also kind of have your own business where like at the end of the day, like sales is a matter of the kind of what you put in, but also it does take that level of skill set. And so like, you have all these things kind of coming together to can you close this person? And if they don't close, well, no worries. You still got to have that like fired up mentality for that next conversation. And so like that takes a certain level of mentality. It's certain kind of like, soul of a person. The first time I made a sale was when I was 19. I pitched the apartment complex I lived at. I went into their office and I said, "Hey, your guys' Instagram sucks. I'd love to manage it for you." I'd recently picked up a camera, started taking photos, and developed this skill set of creating content. This is back in 2016. Well, I was so scared to like fully like go for the close because they said, "What do you want in exchange for it?" And I was like, hmm, let me get back to you in a day. And it wasn't because I really needed to think about it. It was because I was like so scared to ask for like, can I have $500 off my monthly rent? Because what if they said no? Versus now, it's like, my mentality is, the anchor price, right? If they say no to the high price, well, no worries. I got these other two that I was probably banking on you committing to. But it's like at the end of the day, it's like you have these skill sets that you learn over time, and they brought everything. And so once you have this life where you're physically strong and you're like looking good, you take care of yourself, all the other aspects kind of come into place when you have that. Well, then you get to a point where you're like, hey, I want an awesome woman to start to build a life with. And that was a stage of my life where I was at about a year and a half ago, where I met my girlfriend. Her name's Leah. And yeah, we've been traveling around in a couple different countries and, living life. And that's what I think is really important for us guys in our 20s that are working on building something, 20s, 30s, even whatever age. It's like, you want to build a good life for yourself to experience the amazing things. And I really believe that once you get to that point where you have your body, mind right, and your business right, and you find a really good quality woman, well, then like life really opens up to a really good reality for yourself.
Love it. Because I'm looking at your face right now, and as you were saying everything right there, you weren't just you were
Mm.
beaming with this energy. So I could tell this is not just something you're okay, it's just for money. No, this seems like it's something that fuels you, it gives you life. So I'm
Yeah.
curious because I remember checking out one of your YouTube videos. I think you were around
Mm.
either 1921, and you're in this huge apartment. You're talking about, all right, I have this nice job. Materially, I have everything I kind of wanted.
Mm.
And I just feel depressed. So how do you kind of like,
I know what you're talking about. So yeah, I think it's so important for every man to experience like as that luxury lifestyle. Here's the thing, like I understand like there's not a blanket like statement of every man should do this. I actually, as I'm getting older, 27 now, I realize that like there's a lot of different life paths to take. But of course, if anyone's given their opinion and they're speaking about their life and what they believe is like really good advice for anyone else, of course they're gonna, kind of have that blanket slate. But I would say that every man before he has a family and really is kind of like committed and it has like these responsibilities, he should go experience living in either Miami or LA. For me, it was Hollywood, and live that kind of like taste of a high life. So, for example, me and a couple other entrepreneurs, we ended up living in this big, I think it was like a 11,000 square foot mansion or something like that, whatever the uh, dimensions were. There were a couple other houses after that, but when I was 21, we lived in this place called Weed Lake, which is like a street of these ginormous mansions. At the time, it was a lot of YouTubers living in this neighborhood. And so all of a sudden, I'm in this room with a bunch of other entrepreneurs in the other rooms, like in this house, and the conversations and the people that were coming over every day, and just the people we're bumping into. I remember even for Halloween, our Halloween party, we had David Dobrik, there was Nigel Houston, and then a bunch of other like everyone called them like full on celebrities, but like the people like Nigel Houston, super well known skateboarder, someone that I've been watching for many years because I've always been at skateboarding. David Dobrik, one of the biggest YouTubers at the time. It's like because I was in this environment, I was like being in the physical presence of all these like big people, and that was amazing for me to realize like wow, like these are incredible. Like you're not no longer bumping shoulders with just the people that are like comfortable working at some, whatever 9 to 5
Thanos?
job, sitting in a cubicle all day. Yeah, it's like I'm doing people. It's like, wow, like you're doing these amazing things. But the other side of that coin that I was going to say is, I realized that at a young age, it's like, okay, what I really want is freedom, and I want to be able to like do cool things. I do have an element of myself where I like experiencing nice, cool shit. But at the end of the day, I'm also very happy on like a shack on a beach. And then just like having a simple life. But what I want is that freedom to do what I choose. So I realized that I don't necessarily want to be, over leveraged or, have all this money going out, or even just live in an environment where it's very surface level and like, how many followers do you have? How much money do you make? All these things that I realize like LA, which I'm also assuming, Miami and a couple other places are kind of like. But because I was able to experience that at such a young age, now for the past like 7 years, I've been working towards building more just a life that is aligned because of what I've got to experience in my younger years. That was kind of a long-winded answer. But yeah.
Think it kind of leads to one thing Ishmael he brought up, the magical OJ story. Ishmael, you want to like go into that? Because I feel that had
OJ story.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
something to do with the shift that happened for you.
Yeah, so you on your YouTube, I was doing a little bit of research on you. You have a video about your psychedelic experience. I don't remember
Mm.
what exact psychedelic you mentioned it was, if you could refresh our memory. But you do
I,
mention
I,
it
I
started with
bleeped it
a
out because I thought that YouTube would have an issue, and I realized, okay, probably wouldn't. But yeah, it was MDMA in a orange juice glass that this gentleman who was kind of like my guide or whatever he kind of calls that kind of like term. Either he's guiding me
Or
on
your
this journey,
shaman?
and then yeah, shaman, right? And then I think it was like an hour after that, it was a shot of ketamine in the right
Mm.
shoulder.
Mm. What
Copy.
was that
Yeah,
like? Like,
that was intense. That was wild. Just
is
like
it
the video you saw, that's
hmm
exactly what it was. Like what the
just the
visuals,
visuals and
like
the, oh, okay.
literally. So
You guys have
so
to
I
watch this
basically
video.
had yeah, and it's so important because like for me, I view my YouTube channel as a like place to document my life or like my own kind of like diary entries, and I can rewatch it, but also I want to show my kids. There's also the side of like, hey, like with me being a public figure and anyone else that sells advice of saying, hey, I have a way of living that I want to teach you, right? It's like you have to practice what you preach, and one of the best ways to do that is, of course, through content. That's where I think, especially with just this kind of career path I have, it's like a unique blend of like hitting all these things that I have these touch points that I love just telling my story just to tell it with no incentive. I also
Mhm.
love having my men's business where, we have our curriculum and I want to show the world like, hey, here's me that's been doing this for so many years. That's why I think anyone that does, kind of go that path of building personal brands, like even if you don't get many views on your YouTube channel or you don't super consistent, it's just like get those seeds planted. So that way, like you just said, you watched a video of mine from like 4 years ago and you got to experience like what I experienced on this very pivotal moment in my journey.
Real quick on that. So just to get the timeline in that, and you mentioned a couple other times in some of your other content, like the heartbreaks are a big part of making you
Mm.
who you are today, and that's like I feel one of your bigger early struggles that helped a lot. Was that
Yeah.
pre living in the mansions in Hollywood, or where in that
Yeah.
timeline does that kind of?
So I've had two heartbreaks that were like very pivotal for my life. When I was 18, I went to an all guys Catholic school and I was like one of the only kids that was like, I'm not going to college. I didn't come from a rich family. My parents like worked really hard to kind of get me into this school and sacrificed a lot for me to just not end up going to a college. It was a college prep school. So I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to, move to California with a camera and all that. But I had a girlfriend after the summer of graduating high school, and that relationship, there's a lot of other life stuff that happened with, getting kicked out of my dad's house, my stepmom, who I didn't get along with at all that kind of last year. Like, I'm sure, any of you guys have step parents that you maybe haven't gotten the best relationship with?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
So you understand, like, it's tricky.
It's
And it's like,
awkward.
as
It's
you get
awkward.
older, yeah. And I think as you get older, I think it's important to kind of add these notes because, for any podcast that someone listening to from years ago to now, it's like you do kind of change your perspective on some things. And so for me, it's like I have more empathy of understanding, like, well, what were they going through? Right. Here's this kid and all this stuff. And it's kind of like a whole different conversation. But just realizing like I was going through a lot of shit where she ended up actually leaving my dad and she's currently married to my dad's previous best friend. So there's a lot of anger at that time of feeling like betrayal and all this stuff. At that time, I also, was broken up with. And so like I had a lot of like anger towards just, the world. And so one of the ways that I worked through that was going, I want to go become successful and say, fuck all you guys. And so, yeah, I, worked really hard for a couple of years. And then that's when I was actually in 2018 living in this mansion when, yeah, it's like I felt I had reached this goal of finally being seen as significant, even though I was like mentally just actually really just sad. And I was doing all this stuff. It was really just so I could put out content and then have my ex-girlfriend say it when she did. And, she was watching my stories and all this stuff. But then I reached out to her in time and she didn't want to like have a conversation or anything. So I was like, fuck, she sees me doing this good shit. And now it's like, and she doesn't have to know how much I have or what I plan on doing next. It's like, I'm at a point where it's like, this is like cool, big shit in my mind and then should be for her. So for her to not even care or not even like be open, like, hey, well, wow, look at you. You worked too hard. It was like, fuck. So I was just depressed. And that's when I kind of realized I need to find, like purpose for myself. And so I started to a little bit, but then I ended up having another relationship. And this is actually when I was living in Hollywood. And this is where I actually tell a lot of guys, like, be careful what you're leading with when it comes to like marketing yourself in the dating space. Because if you're branding yourself as like this guy that's doing all this crazy cool stuff and, you're successful and you're all this, well, then like that is appealing for sure. And that's in a positive way. But also if you're attracting women that are solely looking for that, and then they find someone else that's more successful or more of this, well, then she's going to leave you because she wasn't with you for you in the beginning. She was with you because of what you could do for her life, right? Tagging along in this exciting adventure. So anyway, yeah, I ended up actually getting cheated on in 2020, and that was just like a really rough time period. So that's where I was like, fuck it, I'm removing all the fancy stuff. I decided to move in at my dad's house, and I slept on this cot in his, in the back room. And that's when I got really into very challenging, like physical exercises, even just like, going out in the woods and doing survival stuff. Like, if you're going through a breakup, maybe you're going to watch those Instagram reels of, they're like more kind of like gritty aesthetic where it's like,
Who's
we're
gonna carry the
dark and it's like,
boats?
yeah, that kind of stuff. I was listening to a lot of David Goggins. That was a big influence at that time. Same with like Jocko Willink and all these things. So I went from like being vibrant and trying to, have like this image of like success and all this stuff. And I was like, fuck it. I want to have this image of like darkness and like
Mhm.
overcoming pain. And so, and then, I have all these chapters of my life still part of me now. But, and I same with you guys. So I'm sure like 5 years ago, you had a certain headspace. And I'm assuming just even you guys like run this conversation, you've probably been that kind of like black sheep for a long time in your life where like you've been that guy with like, I know I'm destined for greatness and I'm doing all this stuff, but there's still kind of like certain characteristics that evolve throughout that journey. So for me, I just realized that, yeah, I still have like this part of me that is very, intense at certain times, but I'm also understanding that like I've let go of things. One of them being that psychedelic experience was an amazing trip. It's like what that's done for you. Just, it gave me a new perspective of, hey, life is very short and like we got to let go of the stuff that is holding us down, whether it was my stepmom leaving my dad and marrying his best friend, but before that, her kicking me out of the house, whether it was my first girlfriend, my second girlfriend, or whatever shit life is throwing at me. Like you realize, hey, like these are all lessons that have given me power in some capacity. And what do I want to do with that moving forward? And for me, it's currently living in South Africa with my girlfriend and working towards my dreams. What about you guys? Like what's, like your main focus at this current stage of your life that you're working towards?
Go ahead, Kharey. I'll let you go first on this one. I've been talking a lot.
2025, its big word or theme for me is follow through. Because
Follow
I'd
through.
say, yeah, the past couple of years, it's I realize I have so much potential. However,
Hmm.
it's kind of a blessing and a curse at the same time where you realize you're capable of so much. A lot of things that a lot of people tend to struggle with, it's like instant for me. So it's easy to get bored. So I'm like, okay, this year I'm picking one thing and I'm committing to
Yeah.
actioning that out and not like switching to something that might be a bit more shiny, just staying locked in like a lion on the hunt. That's the one thing I'm getting. And it doesn't matter what's around me. That's what I'm focused on. So that's kind of the big focus
And
for
for the
me.
purpose of myself on this, as well as the viewers listening, what is that one thing you plan to stick to so we can hold you accountable?
I'd say financial freedom because it's so many different opportunities as far as, okay, I could go get another sales job because right now I'm an SDR and making decent income,
Mm,
but I know I want freedom. So I
yeah.
know money is tied to value, and I have lots of different things I could give back to people. So right now, the biggest thing, I have like a whole week off this entire week. I'm taking that week to one, get super clear. Okay, this is what I'm going to be doing the next year, and taking tangible actions as far as, okay, let me start reaching out to these people, building resources. That way I have that, how'd I say, momentum. Because the last thing I want, it's okay, I'm making money, but I feel like I have golden handcuffs. So
Mm,
I'd say it's
Mm.
staying on the path and knowing, okay, things won't necessarily come immediately, but
yeah.
it's persevering through that, and it's just keeping my head down. Don't watch what other guys are doing, because when in the online space, it's easy to get caught up. Oh, this guy, he has a Lambo, or this guy, he's making this in revenue. It's not worrying about that. It's keeping small, because before I'd set these highly ambitious goals, and it's so big, and then you get paralyzed because it's like, oh, this is kind of
Mm,
big, and you go on months not
yeah.
making any significant progress. So now it's taking smaller goals and hitting those, and it's like, oh, it's possible, and then making it bigger and bigger. Because that's one thing I noticed. A lot of guys who started out same level as me, but they set more, how'd I say, realistic goals, while I had these crazy ambitions. However, I'm like, okay, they're here now, and I'm kind of similar position. And I realized the difference was they set more realistic goals and they achieved those, and it gave them the confidence. Wow, I could just, and I could see that. I see the full thing. Was like, okay, how do I get there? But just trusting, if I keep taking the right steps, eventually I'll get to that end goal that I want to reach.
What I'm hearing is you're focused on one productive leisure. So you have this week off, right? But you're looking at, okay, what can I be doing that will further push me along and will be something that my future self will be grateful that I put this time and energy into. Recognizing that it may not pay off right away, which is kind of what I call planting seeds. So at Gravel to Castle, the name of my men's coaching business is, we talk about, the importance of like every day plant one seed that, maybe won't sprout for 2 3 years. That could be putting out a YouTube video that maybe is going to get 10 20 views, or it could be working on some curriculum that, you're not going to see any change in your business or your bank account or anything right then and there, but you do that, every couple days for an entire year. Well, now all of a sudden you're going to have, you're flipping the invested every day, but then it starts to compound and get bigger and bigger. And I think that's so important. And you having this mindset, and with what you said about the intention, is sticking through, pushing forward, and having that consistency and like committing to that long term plan. And with it being financial freedom, that's good, man. I think it's like recognizing what's working, keep that there. But then in that free time, as much as some other shiny objects look appealing, right? It's going, hey, well, I'm going to keep this, but if this does sound interesting and I, have some free time, I'm going to put some time into it. But not like fully commit or jump into anything new until it's made sense and you've kind of vetted that, hey, this is actually what I'm looking for, and it's going to bring me the fruit that I know I ultimately deserve. I love
Exactly.
that, man.
And I like how you touched on being intentional. And that's something I picked up a lot from your content. What does that word mean to you, intentionality?
It means being clear on the outcome you want and not being emotional about how you're going to go about getting it. I think a perfect form of practice is through intermittent fasting. So if you're like, hey, I want to get abs, well, one of the best ways to do that is by intermittent fasting. Like stop eating, say at like 8 p.m., start eating at noon the following day. And if you're crazy, you could even do like, stop eating at 4 p.m. and then even push it. And I've had different things. My longest fast has been 48 hours. The past couple of months, I've been more like a bulking phase. So I've been like actually eating more. But now I'm like, hey, I feel like my abs aren't as like visible as they were before. So I need to like get back to that standard. After even watching some of my own content, I was like, fuck, that's how my abs looked at that time. I was like, okay, I need to like stop with the rice and all the carbs. But it's like if you can control what you put in your mouth, you can control anything. And so I think one of the best ways to like get that intentional mind is to look at where can I actually practice being intentional to where it becomes hard. It's like if you love eating in the middle of the night, right? Okay, once you've made that decision that I'm not gonna do this thing, or I'm going to do this thing, depending on what that outcome that you want is, make a decision in your mind, but then stop lying to yourself afterwards or stop going back on your word. I think that's one of the biggest reasons why people grew up in their life where they have a lot of regret or just they don't like who they are. I love who I am. I feel so good. I see a much greater version of myself. And when I do fuck up or I make mistakes, I'm like understanding and I can sure we all have frustration with ourselves at times. But like I feel very able to just move forward and at the snap of a finger, just go, okay, what do I need to do to improve? Okay, done. And it comes from like recognizing that when I listen to my internal voice that speaks to me, it's like we are giving it a little bit more power each time. When we disobey our internal voice and we go towards, it's almost like the angel and the devil, right? In those cartoons, right? You have all them on each side of the shoulder, whichever one you feed is the one that gets stronger. So it's like eventually you'll get to a point where, yeah, you still have some doubt, or maybe it's self-sabotage, it's speaking in your ear, and you can still hear it faintly. But you're going to have listened to your intentional side so many times through like that is what you're conditioned to obey and listen to. Is like, no, I want to have this much of my saving. I want to have this aesthetic. I want my partner to feel this. So therefore, I'm going to invest my time into them after work instead of going home and just, saying, yeah, I have too much stuff I got to do. I can't hang out with you. It's like whatever we want to create in our lives that's related to our, finances, our fitness, relationships, all these things. Recognizing, of course, yeah, grab a notebook, spend some time. Maybe it takes a couple weeks to really get clear on what you want. But once you do, like have that shit written down in stone, and that is your blueprint. And when it comes to you following through, you got to look yourself in the mirror and go, what do I actually want? And we all have the ability to be intentional, but most people aren't because they're just not committed to the right thing. They're committed to self-sabotaging compared to creating a life that brings them happiness. That's what I believe.
That was really powerful. I know you really resonate with the Dark Knight, Batman Begins, but
Yeah,
you
it's kind
have
of
this,
funny. Yeah,
how to say, it's more, you have this motivational thing. It's not like this rah-rah thing. It's more, okay, I live what how to say, I preach. And because of that, it kind of radiates off of you. So it's kind of more like this Tyler Durden-esque where it's like, okay, I'm completely anti-society. And he lived and breathed that. And people started coming and flocking to him. So what is one thing you've like learned just being in this, how do I say, space of being a leader where other men look up to? What would you say that has not really forced you, but has required you to evolve into a more like powerful, or not powerful, but a better version of yourself that's capable of wielding that and not abusing it and, how do I say, going off the rails?
yeah. Well, I think all of us are students and teachers at the same time, right? We can have a younger brother, younger cousin, some kid that we're tutoring, right, and doing volunteer work, where we're giving them advice and knowledge. Doesn't matter how much money, how attractive we are, how fit we are. It's like there's people that look up to us for something because we've experienced stuff. But then there's also people who we are just going to shut the hell up and just be a sponge and take notes and learn from because we're like, oh, I know this person. Like, it's almost not even status, but it's almost like, yeah, I guess that's a kind of a similar word. It's like that they're the kind of knowledgeable one in this factor in whatever conversation you're having. So I say that because like everyone should recognize that no matter how low their confidence is or how like, oh, I'm not successful in my business yet. It's like there's people that value your perspective, but also like we were kind of talking about, it's like practice what you preach. The best way for you to have other people like want to listen to you is to be someone that they can just look at and go, oh, that guy's figured out some things. How do you do that? Well, sure, you can go and create fancy content, but at the end of the day, it's like, don't try to just have this image that's online that's then different in person. It's like, have it to where when people just sit down with you and they hear you talk, they go, oh, this is what this person's about. And be someone that's interesting that other people also are kind of drawn to. And I think, um, you know, I had actually a certain point that I wanted to get to and it kind of slipped out. But I think it's just, yeah, so important to have like those different environments where you, again, you get to tap into each of these things. It keeps you humble, but also inspires you. I remember I had 2 guys fly out to Thailand when it was like a year and a half ago. I had like a small little, like, I wouldn't say like full retreat because it's just a couple of guys that flew, but one of them said to me in particular, his name's Daniel. He said, you know, before meeting you in person, I thought you were like this god. And now I realize you're just a normal person. And so when I heard that, it was funny because it's like, well, damn, what did I do to fuck up the God image, right? But the other side is like, no, yeah, for sure. Of course I'm a human. Like I didn't do anything to where I thought it would like, I didn't try to be a god in his mind, is basically what I'm getting
Mhm.
at. And it was just interesting because I could relate to that with other people that I've met in the past and conversations I've had where I remember the first like entrepreneur event I went to was a conference in like 2016. And just like being around an entrepreneur, just period, was so fascinating because it wasn't as glorious and like common as it is now. It was like someone dropped out of high school or college or, you know, they started a business and you're like, whoa, wait, they don't have another job too? Like that's their career? Like that was so fascinating. I remember always being that person where like I looked up to them so much. And so I think something that is important for all of us to realize is, you know, when we have experiences that we've actually grown from and we know like, hey, this is super valuable for people that are in the situation I used to be in to hear. It's like you gain a lot of fulfillment in your life by having that voice. It doesn't necessarily mean you got to start your own coaching business and be this personal brand. It can literally be just like going and volunteering or spend time with your family. I understand like every person has their own kind of specific path. But for me, I'm fortunate to where I found one that does make me money, doesn't light me the hell up and gets me very excited. I get to be creative and what you mentioned about the, you know, the Dark Knight, the Batman Begins and all this stuff. It's like, I love movies. I love Sons of Anarchy, The Walking Dead, Lost, Batman. Like I've had all these shows where there's like this main character that I would watch when I was having hard time periods. And I recognized, well, why am I drawn to this person? And I started reverse engineering, like, what characteristics do I actually want to implement myself uh, to like be that person that I look up to, like for other people. And I think, yeah, like just studying movies is actually very beneficial. It's not just leisure, like for me.
Mhm. Yeah, also, I really want to highlight in there like the whole following through on what you're saying and not just living an online personality part of that. Because
Yeah.
I think that's, especially nowadays, that's very important because everyone kind of, and you're not saying you're doing this, but oftentimes on social media, we all like make ourselves look out to be gods. You know, like when I go to the
Mhm.
gym, I post my bicep flex at the end, not me failing a 225 bench press right before because I'm like, okay, these guys are
Oh
gonna look
yeah,
at me and
yeah.
be like, yeah, this guy just failed. You know, we all like post our high moments, and so but we also, you know, we all say that we're putting in the work and that's why we're posting these highs. We're saying like, hey, I grinded, so I got this Lamborghini that I'm showing you. So then there being a genuine work that is going on off the screen is extremely
Mm.
important. And it's very, because when someone finally sees you in person, they're like, oh shit, Ken's not just some guy who's ripped. Ken's ripped because I just saw this guy do like 10,000 push-ups in the middle of a forest on some primal shit, you know? Like they see you
Yeah.
really embodying the part that, not because you show it a little bit more because it's a part of your brand, but not everyone shows that work in, but just actually
Mm.
genuinely doing what you're telling people you're doing. Because one, you're reinforcing your self-belief of who you are, and you know you're,
100%.
and once you, I think a lot of things actually start internally. Once you start believing in yourself, so once you know that you're a legitimate person, you know you're not a swindler, you're not a hustler, you are what you say you are. There's this aura and a glow to you. Like when you talk about your stuff now, I know you're not just saying this to get me to sign up for Gravitas. I can say like this is, if I had to put my money on it, Ken hops off of this camera today and goes lives the life he's telling us about. This isn't just like words or a camera.
Yeah. It's like we all have the positive and the negative day, right? Where it's like maybe a day is like a massive win. You feel like things are super dialed in. Other days where it's like, fuck, this is hard. I feel like shit. I feel lazy, whatever. At the end of the day, I still get a workout in. I did a little ab workout, you know, a little bit ago, and I kind of felt like it was kind of like an off day. But like you said, you're just checking off those boxes. And I think that's something that's important to address and have is that transparency. Is like you're gonna have these days where you don't feel super dialed in, but it's what do you do on those days that define you moving forward and create that identity that you truly believe. It's like, yeah, you can try to fake a personality. And this is why I'd say, like, even living in like LA many years ago, like there was a part of me that was that. I tried to be this like masculine dude when I didn't have masculinity. I didn't work out. Actually, I didn't. I was like nervous talking to girls for sure. You know, my game was shit. But also it's because like I knew I wasn't this man that was like non-conditional, which is what I think is a very good word to kind of end on. Because I do have a meeting I got to hop off in just a minute. But it's like when you do follow through, right, with what you were mentioning earlier, is like that commitment to like I want to achieve this. It's like, well, cool. Once you've broken down like who's the character I gotta be and step into to create that reality for myself. It's like do that whether or not you're seeing the results. I think when you have that mentality and then you have enough years under your belt of living that way, that's when great opportunities come, such as a Vice documentary being, you know, filmed. It's like I just got an email. I didn't have a big platform. Yeah, I've built my brand on Instagram since I was 18 years old, right? So I've had some things, but at the end of the day, it's like there's much bigger people in this space that they could have done documentary on. But it's because I was ready for that camera to be turned on and recorded, and I didn't have to pretend to be anything. I could just be myself. And some people are gonna love it, but some people are gonna hate it. Doesn't matter. But when you have that identity that you fully step into, your tribe and your people are gonna resonate, and that's how you build lifelong friendships. So yeah, and that's why I'm excited for you guys and to, you know, grow our friendship and you know, relationship this way, because it's like, hey, we have done a podcast and all of a sudden, you know, who knows where we'll be in 6 months, a year, years, you know.
Exactly.
You got to come to Austin next year to the next one.
I do, man. 100%. I unfortunately have to hop off right now. I gotta hop on this meeting. But brothers, thank you so much for having me on here. Let's do another episode sometime when I have a little bit more time too, and maybe we can go like for another like for an hour and jam and all that stuff.
That
Oh yeah,
works.
I'm with that.
And for the
All right,
folks
guys.
who don't know you, Ken, where would you say they could find you, real quick?
Gravel2castle.com or my Instagram, the Ken Conklin. Or even Gravel to Castle. Just look up Ken Conklin, you'll find me on Google.
All right, sweet. Enjoyed it.
All right, Ken. Appreciate you, man. Have a good meeting.
All right. See you guys. Peace.
Take care.